Okay, let's talk about values. All right, so everything that we are doing in this program is based on you getting in touch with yourself, you creating a life that is worth living. And the way that we are doing this, and it's a multi-stepped program, scaffolding on many things. However, in saying that, mindfulness is going to be certainly one of the things. Gratitude is certainly another one of the things. The awareness of the mind is certainly one of the things. The biggest thing that I really want you to take out of this program is a thing called values. Values, okay? Values are really important, really significant, okay? I would have shared with you, hopefully, a video called Discomfort Appears in the Light of Significance. That is based on stuff coming up for us. The only reason why we feel uncomfortable is because it's related to a value, all right? There's friction usually against a value. Now, we pay a lot of lip service to values. We have the organisational values. We might have a business that we have values around. But we don't really have in-depth conversations around values, and we don't necessarily know what our values are. We might be able to list maybe 5 or 10 values off the top of our head, and we might even be able to put them in priority, I guess, if you did do that. However, every decision that you make in life is one value versus another, or a group of values versus a group of values, or a group of values versus another. But every decision is based on values. We are not necessarily aware of that because we don't spend too much attention or time in that space. We don't spend too much time in the moment. We just flip through stuff and just keep on going. But we don't necessarily think about and experience the moment too much. So values are really important. Now, if you had have watched the video, it's a values model. It's discomfort appears in the light of significance. So we feel something gets triggered in us. We feel some discomfort. We then say, wow, that's really interesting. I wonder what that's related to. The value is what it's related to. We work out what the value is, and then we role model the value to others, and we also role model it to self. Okay, that is one of the best. So that happens in the moment. Okay, discomfort appears in the light of significance. That happens in the moment, and we need to be aware of this stuff happening in the moment, so we don't react from emotion. It's more about responding from values. So when we are in touch with the moment, when we are aware of that model, we then come from a value-oriented decision-making process. The more decisions that we make during our day that are in line with our values, the more integral, the more whole we feel, because we have then lived moments that are in line with us. And this is this space of truth, authenticity, genuineness that you might hear me talk about. And integrity is a value. However, it fell into this moral space, and it's not necessarily a morality component. What it originated from was to be integral, to be whole, okay, and to come from that space of genuineness, to come to you, speak your truth, be authentic, okay. So when we are more in line with our values, we are more whole. And then that's a really powerful place to come from, because we know that if we are not in line with our values, there's a lot of internal conflict within us. We then become the hypocrite. We feel guilty. We feel shame. We betray ourselves. All of these different parts of self then start to appear. So values are really important. Now, the tricky thing is that how do I become in touch with my values? Well, there's the values model, which hopefully you will be practicing. It does take time to get this though, okay? Don't just look at it and go, okay, I can do this, because this is a real process. However, this is part of the process that we're going through within this program. So by the end of the program, you'll be much more aware of it, and you'll be able to move into that space much more. And then as you move into that space much more, you then discover yourself. And that's the beautiful thing. This program is about self-discovery, okay? We hide from ourselves so much by placing our stuff onto others, you know. So one way to work out what your values are, and this is a really good way for you to do it, but it's also a really good way for if you've got any kids or anything like that, if you're working with people who aren't in touch with their values, which most of us aren't anyway, what we do, and this is a very simple way, is to say to yourself and say to others, say, hey, look, and what I want you to do right at this moment is that I want you to think of 3 characteristics that you like within a person who inspires you, empowers you, and uplifts you. So 3 characteristics of a person who empowers you, inspires you, and uplifts you. Somebody that you think, when you think about them, and you know, it just lifts you up. You know, when you leave a conversation with them, you feel like you've been given something, given some energy, you know, given some love, compassion, whatever it is. So I want you to stop the video now, write down those 3 characteristics of somebody who inspires you, empowers you, and uplifts you. Okay? I'll be right here when you get back. Cool. So, I hope that you actually did do that. I know sometimes that, you know, when people say that, I don't usually do it anyway. However, if you did do it and you've written these things down, the reason why you've written these things down is, and the reason why you like these things about this person, is that those characteristics actually are in line with what you value in others. Okay? Which is really interesting, because now we're going, oh, how? We're talking about values, right? So what I value in others is also what I value within myself. So if there was kindness, compassion, and honesty, you know, then I would then value those characteristics within others, but I would also value them within myself. So, you know, compassion, kindness, and honesty. So if I wasn't in line with my values and I was dishonest to people, then I would not feel good about myself. If I wasn't showing kindness to people, then I wouldn't feel good about myself. And I wasn't compassionate to people, then I wouldn't feel good about myself. Now the other side of this is that, how honest am I to myself? I'm not too sure. Most of the time I think I am, but I tell myself a lot of lies. That I am not enough, that I'm not good enough, that people won't like me, people won't accept me. I'm not being honest to myself. How compassionate am I to myself? In times I'm really deeply compassionate to myself, and other times I just berate myself and judge myself. There's no acceptance for myself. And how kind am I to myself? Most of the time I would say that I'm very kind to myself, but some of the times I'm not. So see how values are really, really, you know, they're integral in who we are and how we feel about ourselves, and also how we feel about others. So that was 3 characteristics. That's just 3 characteristics that we find that inspire, empower us, and uplift us in others. So this is a really good way to work with children, work with others, more importantly, work with ourselves. So whenever you see somebody who inspires you, uplifts you, and empowers you, think of the characteristics that they are presenting to you, because you are resonating with those characteristics because they are existent within you. So Carl Jung, he said that we cannot see anything outside of ourselves, and this is a classic example of that. So let's go on the other side. So what I'd really like you to do is to write down 3 characteristics or 3 traits about somebody who makes your blood boil, who you don't like to be around, and pretty much, you know, who you avoid like the plague. Okay? If you hated somebody too, bring them into it as well. But write down 3 characteristics, traits of that person. Now when we're talking about this, it could be a person, it could be a movie star, it could be a character that you've seen in a movie, it could be a DC or an Avenger, you know, type thing. So stop the video, write down those 3 things, 3 components, 3 traits, 3 characteristics of people who make your blood boil, who you dislike, and who you avoid like the plague. And if you want to go really hard, people that you hate. Okay, so stop the video and we'll do 3 of those points. Okay, hopefully you've done that. Otherwise you would have watched me as well. Fair enough. The 3 things that you have written down in regard to that are also related to your values, because they are the opposite of your values. Okay, so say we had somebody who was a liar, somebody who was maybe a bully, and somebody who was maybe a narcissist. That would be good. Okay, bully, liar, and a narcissist. What's the opposite to bullying? And this is where we go. What is the opposite to bullying? So when we look at bullying, we sort of look at there's a real power indifference. Someone's trying to take someone's power by the things that they do, the words that they say, the physical actions that they do, the intimidation. So that's a power thing. So the opposite to bullying could be empowerment. So the reason why we don't like bullies is because we value empowering people rather than disempowering people. Okay. The reason why we don't like the narcissist, because the narcissist only thinks about themselves and nobody else, is because we value consideration for others. We value kindness. We value compassion. We value loyalty and honesty. All of those different values. So see how one thing can bring up so many values of ours. I think, what was the other one? Maybe so dishonesty. Dishonesty might be might be something we don't like in somebody. The opposite of that obviously is honesty, but you've got truth, you've got loyalty, integrity, those sorts of things. So see how even the person that we don't like, they can actually show us what our values are, because it is the opposite to it. Okay. Now, that's really interesting, because all we've thought about is 3 good things and 3 bad things, you know, and then all of a sudden we're starting to expand on our values. Now, that's really significant, because if I had have just asked you at the beginning of this video to write down your values, like I said, you probably might have come up with 5 or 10, but it's through our interactions with others that we then really get to experience what our values are, to see what our values are. And then let's go back to the beginning of this video. I said every decision is based on values. You know, values don't necessarily have a fixed point of reference or a fixed weight. So at some points, so I'm going to give an example here. So say I'm working with a colleague who's being bullied by the team leader. Okay. Now, because my values are around justice, advocation, kindness, compassion, and things like that, I want to then advocate for my colleague who's being bullied by my team leader. Now, the challenge here, though, is that if I do that, then potentially I may lose my job. And if I lose my job, then that's my family that I'm concerned about. I've got bills to pay. I've got my own self-concept that sits around that. So see how all of those, they're really valuable to me as well. So at particular points, even though justice and advocation are really important to me, and kindness and compassion, in this sense, my family, my connection to others, how I can move through this world, my own safety is actually going to be more, there's more weight and more value within that than there is with the advocating for my colleague. As much as I want to advocate for my colleague, if I put myself into that position, I might lose my job. So then I'll choose those values that are more important to me, that have a greater priority to me in that particular case. So values will have different priority depending on the context, depending on the situation. So it's not like my top values are loyalty, honesty and respect, because sometimes they're not going to be the most important ones. Sometimes probably, and I'm going to say this, safety and survival are going to be the most important ones. And you might have to compromise your values of honesty, loyalty and respect to stay safe. So it's a very interchangeable thing, and this is where we talk about psychological flexibility, because we need to be flexible depending on the context of the experience, okay? And when we see the context of the experience, then we allow values to take greater priority than other values. So, just to summarise that, values are really, really important in our lives. They impact every decision that we make every moment of the day. Most of our values are going to actually be based on safety because we naturally come from a fear-based perspective and we need to keep ourselves safe, right? Other times we might actually compromise the values that are really important to us and strong to us for safety. It's okay. We don't need to get upset about it. We don't need to throw second darts, which is another video that hopefully you've watched as well. And we just need to be flexible around that approach, okay? Discomfort appears in light is significant, so look at that video. That's a values-based model that when discomfort appears within us, it's related to a value. We then acknowledge the value and then we role model the value to self and then others, rather than reacting to the discomfort, reacting to the trigger, reacting to the emotion, okay? So values are really, really important. If you ever want to expand on your values, just think about people that you like and people that you don't like. Think about people that you love to spend time with compared to the people that you don't love to spend time with. What are the characteristics around those people? You know, both positive and negative, both good and bad, both light and dark. Just to give you an idea of what your values are related to. And see how when we start to look at it from that perspective, it just gives us a greater understanding of what happens during our days. And the more that we align with our values, the more that we make decisions based on our values, the more whole we feel, the more purpose, the meaning that we have, and clarity and presence within our life. And that's what this program is all about. Cool. I hope you got something from that anyway. So thanks, guys. I'll talk to you soon.